Guys, here we are. This is an quick emergency FOF episode about the announcement that's just come out that Denis Villeneuve is going to direct the next Bond film. This is not my normal FOF setup. I'm in my office. This is a weird low angle where I look like a troll, and you can see the Interstellar poster behind me. I just needed to get this off my chest. We need to just get this out in the air, get this out in the whatever the word is, the atmosphere. Let's just talk about this. You can tell that I'm excited. This is extremely exciting. So, yes, if you haven't heard, you will have heard. Denis Villeneuve is directing the next Bond movie. And so that will be coming out. This is the first issue, right? Denis Villeneuve is attached to start shooting Dune Messiah, the part 3 of Dune, in the next year or so. And so that's got a 2026 release. He's going to start shooting it now, and it's got a 2026 release, which means that... Sorry, I need to just calm down. Which means that the next Bond film, at the earliest, will have a 2027 release, okay? And No Time to Die came out, correct me if I'm wrong, in 2021. It was pretty soon after COVID, and I think the box office was affected by that, but that's another story. Which means that there will be 6 years between Bond films, which has got to be one of the longest gaps. I think there was a pretty significant gap between Quantum of Solace and Skyfall, to memory. I'm going to say 4? But no, I think this 6-year gap is going to be pretty solid. I'd be intrigued to see how long the gap was between Die Another Day and Casino Royale. Should we find that out? 2002 for Die Another Day and 2006 for Casino Royale. 4 years. So, yeah, that's a long time. And thankfully, unlike... what were we talking... I was on the Pulp Kitchen podcast recently talking about the gap between the Batman movies, as in the Robert Pattinson The Batman movies. And it looks like it's going to be about 6-7 years between those movies. And I think that's more significant because it's the same actor playing a recurrent character in what's, I assume, going to be a continuation of the same narrative. Whereas this is a reboot, 6 years. Oh my God, it was 6 years between Spectre and No Time to Die, but that was because there was the COVID delay. I think that was supposed to come out 2020 or maybe even 29. No, it was 2020, yeah. So, okay, I'm calming down now. So I think the main takeaway is this a good choice? Absolutely fucking yes. So me and my Bond manic friends talk regularly during this currently 4-year period about who could be the next Bond, who could direct the next Bond, what they should do. And then Amazon MGM bought this property, and we were like, are they going to do Bond spin-offs? Are they going to dilute the product? It looks like what this appointment says, Denis Villeneuve, director of Blade Runner 2049, Prisoners, Sicario, Dune. What this says is they are plowing ahead, looking to make a true cinematic experience, which answers that question of what are Amazon going to do with this product. And in terms of the options that were available to them, Denis Villeneuve, for me and my crazy mates, was always absolutely number one. So I'll read you some other options that were on the table, legitimately on the table. Christopher Nolan was never really on the table. He obviously would do it, but I think that producers know that that he would want probably the most creative control out of all the options. He would maybe even want to cast his own Bond. That was someone probably messaging about Bond there, if you heard that WhatsApp notification. And it also, I feel like a Bond film directed by Nolan would be more of a Nolan film than a Bond film. He's got a bigger name than the character at the moment, let's say, as cinema-going people. I think his name can get more box office clout than Bond, right? Oppenheimer earned over $1 billion. No Time to Die earned $750 million. It's probably an unfair comparison, but anyway. So he was never my number one for those reasons. I would love him to do it, but Nolan movies have their Nolanist quirks, and I'm not sure that I need those in a Bond film. Would it even be linear? Do you know what I mean? Like, can he make a linear film? Other options, Edgar Wright, that's director of Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. He would certainly bring visual pizzazz, but I think and he's also directed Baby Driver, but I think his style is way too comic booky for what Bond needs to be in the modern era. I think Craig re-established Bond as a mostly grounded and gritty, real-life action spy character, rather than a comic booky style character. And I think Edgar Wright would be kind of changing his own sensibility in order to fit this. We also had on the table Paul King, the director of Paddington and whatnot, and Willy Wonka, I think, as well, the one with Timothée Chalamet. And I think he would have been a good option in terms of like British patriotism, I guess. You know, he's a British director. He's handled British famous traditional British projects before in the Paddington franchise, but he doesn't have the chops to handle the scale of action. The other one was obviously Danny Boyle, who was attached to No Time to Die and then got booted off for reasons still quite unclear. I think the 28 years later release has shown that Danny Boyle is similar to Nolan, I guess, in a way. He makes Danny Boyle films, right? And I think if you had a Danny Boyle Nolan movie, you would expect it to have all the Danny Boyleisms in there. The freeze frames, the way he shoots action is so distinctive, and I'm not going to mangle my words and try and describe that right now. But this is all just to say that Denis Villeneuve has been at the very, very top of this list, in my opinion, and I think in everyone's opinion. And why is that? It's because, just as we said, is a detriment to the Nolan and Boyle options, Denis Villeneuve gives himself to the project and to the material at hand while still retaining enough of a directorial creative vision to put his stamp on it. And his stamp is a very, very good stamp. It's the best stamp. It's the type of stamp that you would stamp at an old clerical office in the 60s. Big old wax stamp, right? It's the best of both worlds. He's going to leave enough space for a Bond movie to be a Bond movie, but also give it enough of his pizzazz to make it, in my opinion, this is undoubtedly going to be the best Bond movie ever made. Now, hear me out. I know that's ridiculous to say. I know that is ridiculous to say, but just think about it, right? This is the guy that took the IP for Blade Runner. Blade Runner is one of the most beloved cult and mainstream classics of all time. And he made a sequel to it that not only wasn't shit, but is like, in some circles, loved more than the original. I personally prefer it to the original, but I'm not a huge fan of the original. That's another story. The point is that nobody thinks that he did a bad job with Blade Runner 2049, right? And nobody thinks that he got in the way of what is a Blade Runner movie. And yet, it's still a Denis Villeneuve movie. Second example, obviously Dune, right? He has shown that he has taken the IP previously attempted by David Lynch. He's made it his own while staying true to the source material in a way that has pleased mainstream fans and fans of the source material. He's not only achieved the impossible with that apparently hard to adapt source material, which I haven't read. He's not only achieved the impossible once, but twice, and I would bet my house on him achieving it a third time with Doom Messiah being an absolute banger of a movie, right? So this is a guy who is not only a creative force, like a legitimate beacon of light in Hollywood right now when it comes to a distinctive style and like I say, a kind of a creative stamp that is just highly valuable. Sorry, I'm really trying to like grab the words because I'm feeling very excited. But it also works for mainstream audiences. Blade Runner 2049, Dune Part 2, Sicario, Prisoners. Like, these are not like beggy movies. These are not like movies that are made to make lots of money in a cynical sense. These are entertaining, thoughtful, intelligent movies where and he truly gives himself to the project. Like when you hear him talk about Dune, he has truly immersed himself in that world and respects that source material, and yet isn't scared to make decisions to veer away from that I've heard from people who love the books. And like I say, elevates that difficult source material to be a mainstream hit. And he brings along all these brilliant actors with him, and his casting is on point. So obviously Amazon are going to head up the production of this movie with Amy Pascal and David Heyman. David Heyman, the producer of the Harry Potter franchise. Like these are really experienced producers. But apparently he's going to bring along his own producer to join that team. I can't find the name, so sorry. But basically that shows that Denis Villeneuve is going to have a hand in the creative vision of this movie, whilst also being marshalled by Amy Pascal and David Heyman. And you can hear you can hear in past interviews, and also in an interview I'm about to read for this press release, you can hear that Denis Villeneuve has always been a true fan of Bond. Like this is not out of the blue, in the sense where, okay, we're attaching him because he's a great director and fingers crossed he can do a good job. This is a great director who has a personal affinity and love for the IP in question. And like I say, will give himself fully to making the best Bond movie in Denis Villeneuve's way, through the prism of Denis Villeneuve, I should say. And so he loves Bond. That's really important. He says, some of my earliest movie-going memories are connected to 007. I grew up watching James Bond films with my father ever since Dr. No. I'm a die-hard Bond fan. To me, he's sacred territory. I intend to honour the tradition and open the path for many missions to come. This is a massive responsibility. That is, as press release quotes go for this situation, that's as good as it can get. Obviously, these are mostly things that you would say if you got selected to direct the next James Bond. You're not going to say, I don't really give a shit about Bond, but I'll give it a go. Okay. Like, obviously, he's going to say that he loves Bond and blah, blah, blah. But these are strong words. I'm a die-hard Bond fan. To me, he's sacred territory. I intend to honour the tradition. That's so important. Bond is all about tradition, and yet open the path for new missions to come. That's so important, because what we saw through the Craig era was an attempt at an overarching narrative that, to be honest, was fumbled and fucked. And actually, we all know, spoiler alert, stop listening if you didn't see No Time to Die, they fumbled it so much that the only real way to close it off was to kill the fucker. Like, that's just... They really... For me, Bond should be... It should be episodic for me. So Bond should be almost like a Mission Impossible movie, although they fucked that at the end as well. Bond should be, we meet Bond. He's an active agent, and there are some obstacles to overcome in the pre-titles action sequence, which is pretty much unrelated to the ensuing plot. He's set a mission. He gets some gadgets, whether they're grounded or unrealistically futuristic, whatever the tone you want to go for. He goes on the mission, he flirts a little bit, and then he wins. That's literally what a Bond film should be, and I think it should be every single time. And I think the more that the Craig era tried to skirt close to this kind of MCU baiting, like, oh, let's try and make a narrative out of this, it didn't suit the character, because narrative means, a love story, and a love story, I understand they're trying to evolve the character of Bond, but the character of Bond is lonely. That is integral to his persona, is the fact that he's flirty and is promiscuous, but it's from a place of loneliness, right? That's why it's integral to the character. So point is that I hope, from what I'm reading from Denis Villeneuve, he says, I intend to honour the tradition and open the path for many new missions to come. I hope that means this is going to be an episodic approach. Like, let's just set this character up to be what it should be moving forward. New mission, new mission, new mission. And then you don't tie yourself up in knots, because then if a actor has to drop out and you have to recast, or it does take 8 years to make the next Bond film, which I hope Amazon aren't going to do, it's okay, because it's just a new mission anyway. You're not trying to remember what the fucking plot was from 6 years ago. That to me is the road. And so just looping all the way back to what I said, I think you can pretty much say that this is going to be, if not the best Bond movie of all time, certainly one of the best. And the reason why that's certain is because of all the things I've just said, plus the fact this guy doesn't make a bad movie. He does not make a bad movie. Do you want to just go through Denis Villeneuve's filmography, right? And try and tell me what's a bad movie. You might have your opinions up or down, whether you preferred this one to that one or whatever. Okay, so I've only seen from Encendies, right? I haven't seen his previous, before he kind of broke out with Encendies. He had Polytechnic, Maelstrom. I haven't seen these movies. Encendies, absolute banger. Prisoners, absolute banger. Enemy, okay. Kind of not proving my point here. Enemy's not very good. Forget that, okay. Sicario, absolute banger. Arrival might actually be my favourite of all. I haven't even fucking mentioned it. Absolute banger. Blade Runner 2049, as discussed, IP and a banger. Dune, unreal. Dune Part 2. Do I need to say any more? No. He also had a writing hand in Dune and Dune Part 2, so it shows that he narratively, he's not just a gun for hire, pardon the pun, as the directors go. He also can have a hand in the writing too. He doesn't make bad movies. Don't remember that I said enemy. Forget about enemy. He doesn't make bad movies. And when was the last time we had I think a similar appointment to this was Sam Mendes for Skyfall. We all know how that went. Sam Mendes is not as a refined action director or director of IP as Denis Villeneuve, and yet he managed to pull off Skyfall. I see a similar, because Skyfall felt like a kind of semi-reboot at the time, didn't it? It was almost like rebooting the reboot. I see a similar successful reboot. And one final note that I put down was actually who's going to be the cinematographer. It's an interesting question to me, because Hoyte van Hoytema has worked on previous Bond movies. I think he worked on Spectre and maybe No Time to Die as well. And Hoyte van Hoytema is currently, working mostly with Chris Nolan. He's currently shooting The Odyssey, or maybe that's finished shooting now. And so, and he did a great job, right? And so maybe he could come back into the fold. But then you also have Greg Fraser, who Denis Villeneuve works with regularly now. He worked with on Dune and Dune Part 2. And Greg Fraser has had some unbelievable... Greg Fraser worked on, The Batman as well. This is another great creative force when IP movies are concerned. Let me just read you Greg Fraser's filmography. Yeah, The Batman, The Creator, Dune Part 2, Rogue One, Zero Dark 30. This guy knows what he's fucking doing. And then the final option would be Roger Deakins, right? And Roger Deakins obviously worked with Denis Villeneuve through his earlier, slightly earlier career to Dune. So we're talking Prisoners, Sicario, Blade Runner 2049. And Denis Villeneuve also worked, obviously, on Skyfall with... Roger Deakins obviously worked on Skyfall with Sam Mendes. He shot Skyfall, which is still the most beautiful Bond film, in my opinion. Does Roger Deakins have it in him to do one more movie? Because I know, I'm just looking now, he's 76 years old. Look, 76 is young these days, isn't it? But he has only directed one film since 1917. So 1917 was in 2019. Empire of Light was in 2022. That was another Sam Mendes movie. And he hasn't done anything since then. That feels like a choice to me. It feels like he's kind of winding down. Because previous to that, just looking up, he had films every single year. So does he have it in him to do one more movie? Does Denis Villeneuve want to divert away from Greg Fraser now? Is Greg Fraser his guy? Or was it just his guy on Dune because Roger Deakins was working on Empire of Light? Who knows? And then also there's the third option of Hoyte van Hoytema. And I just throw him in the ring because like he's thrown in the ring of any cinematography conversation now. And given that he's worked on Bond before, I think he could be in Denis Villeneuve's thoughts. He's changed cinematographer before. Who knows? He could change again. So look, as you can tell, I'm extremely excited. I've got so much to do this morning, and I didn't have time for a 20-minute diatribe about Denis Villeneuve directing Bond, but here we are. And I just want to say we won, okay? I feel like Elle Woods at the end of Legally Blonde. Class of 2025, we did it! Wow! Everyone throws their hats up. We absolutely did it. At Fred Asquith on Film, TikTok, Instagram. Let's fucking go, guys. I'll see you in 2027.